How does one respond to a commentary that literally excuses violence against the trans community?
Trans people in Britain face huge levels of abuse in all areas of their life. They quote statistics showing that hate crimes against trans people have increased 37% in the last year, and say they're proud of their work towards trans equality.
Yes, but the reason hate crimes have increased is because everything is now transphobic, including saying statements like, men aren't women. These are considered transphobic statements. So the reason that these hate crime figures are going up is because the bar has been set so low for what is and isn't transphobic.
Clamoring for some of that negative attention J.K. Rowling's been getting lately, Graham Linehan, creator of Father Ted, a show I still happen to enjoy sadly enough, gave up his successful career to focus on telling the rest of us how much he hates trans women. With such a marvellous waste of time in his hands, what did happen to this one-time titan of Channel 4 comedy? Where did he come from, and why the hell are we giving this such obvious waste of space the time and energy to talk about? Obviously he feels he's missing out. Rowling's got the main spotlight, and everyone's talking about Gia Carano right now as she's decided to show us how much against cancel culture she is by joining forces with the very man who wants to cancel the trans community, Ben Shapiro. Sadly, including my youngest brother, who recently added her to his latest follow on Twitter, only adding to my opinion that he is not only totally uneducated in the science of gender, but completely unaware of my transition. So hi Ben. Thanks for showing me it wasn't a mistake for your elder sister to walk away from the family. It's nice to know where I stand, and I can at least find solace in the reality that you're so against witchcraft and Halloween that at least you're not giving Rowling your money to read her books or watch her films. I mean, it's almost laughable to know that your transphobia has at least some standards. Huh, the Respectable Bigot. Sounds like a comedy series I should write. Thanks for the inspiration, bro. And I'm trademarking that, Graham. So in an ironic twist of fate, to make a point that trans people for the most part are predatory men dressing as women to prey on women, but not predatory women disguising themselves as men to prey on cis men, Graham once again made the news by joining the female dating app, Her, presenting himself as a woman, thus proving the point that yes, cis men can indeed be predatory enough to identify as women to prey on women. Of course, all this proven is something everybody, including the trans community, already knows. In fact, the one time a man was arrested for assaulting anybody in the bathrooms for dressing as a woman was in fact a cis man trying to prove a point to something that on the whole doesn't happen in the trans community to cis women. I'm not sure these people fully understand the point they're actually trying to make, that cis men are more of a threat to cis women than actual trans women are. I mean, it takes an inordinate amount of effort to become a trans woman to even go to that point. I'm not sure that's the angle you were going for, is it, Graham? You know, it's kind of amazing that I even have to include this as a chapter on this video, because it's interesting that that should be brought up. The problem with that argument is that most predatory men who use fake lesbianism to bait lesbian women would not reveal their identity in such the same way that Graham did, who, as we have already established, did so to prove a point. However, his point was more or less made moot by this self-avowed ally of feminism by at the same time posting 20 images on the accounts of women and non-binary people that, according to his standards, which ironically are made normative by a largely patriarchal point of view, that by their look alone they shouldn't even be considered lesbian. It's easier to call out an account that literally pulled a publicity stunt, especially if that same person is constantly posting on his blog how he keeps getting back onto the Her app. The fact that his ban should have told him and his supporters something about his behaviour says more about his hypocrisy and invading women's spaces, when that's exactly what he's admitting to doing himself. You can't attack a community of people for calling out a person who literally pulled a stunt designed to draw attention. That's not the defence you think it is. Also then, there is Graham's assertions that trans activism, or to be more fair to him, hormone and testosterone blockers on children who identify as transgender, is tantamount to Nazi experimentation, whilst at the same time compiling a list of names and the photographs and profiles on a lesbian dating app that recognises trans women as women, and then posting them on his blog for his turf echo chambers to see, strikes me as the most heinous hypocrisy at best, and the most dangerous activity for a high-profile writer to engage in at worst. Wait, you think I'm exaggerating that point? I mean, it's only words and pictures, right? He's not putting anyone in any real danger, is he? What about his freedom of speech? Well, to emphasize my point, let's take a look at one of the people Graham is very vocal about defending, Linda Bellos. Linda Bellos, a radical Labour activist, radical feminist and anti-racist, which to me should be a better focus of her time and energy, at one event was quoted as to saying, "I play football, and I box, and if any one of those bastards comes near me, I will take off my glasses and thump them. I'm quite prepared to threaten violence because it seems to me politically what they are seeking to do is piss on women." Now, she claimed she was referring to an event in Hyde Park where a trans woman did indeed attack an anti-trans feminist, but she didn't put that into context at the time. I'm not going to debate the merits of such a claim, except to say that if you're making a statement, it helps to back it up with the context at the time. But it also doesn't help that Linda Bellos is sadly a well-known spokesperson at events ran and supported by groups that advocate violence against trans women. Also, it doesn't help that she claims, in context, it was all about self-defense, and that she literally said, and I quote, and I will emphasize this as the video progresses as well, that she would be prepared to threaten violence. Which kind of puts the opening clip I posted on Graham's excuse for such violence, doesn't it? He's literally claiming that the very response to his transphobia and bigotry is what is making the violence worse. The more people like him are silenced, the more violent people who support his views become. And he seems to be okay with that. I'm not saying he thinks that's a good thing, but his excuses for it deserve valid criticism, especially when put into context with his recent outing of 20 people who he, as a man ironically pretending to be a lesbian, claims not to have the right to be considered lesbian. So here's the first problem with this claim, and with apologies to Lindsay Ellis who used this with better effect than I ever could, the tiresome will someone think of the children argument. Now here's something I'm going to admit that Graham probably won't admit is his greatest weakness. I'm no child psychologist, and being transgender myself does not make me an expert on the topic, despite the fact since coming out I find myself taking on the role as an educator to those who want to know more. Unlike Graham, I won't pretend to have all the answers to the transgender condition. I can only comment insofar as how it has affected me both now and in the past. I won't come in here and pretend that all children know what they want at a young age, or that there isn't an element of peer pressure from time to time to be something they are not. But I can say from personal experience and seeing it firsthand that there is very little peer pressure in school from fellow students for a boy to dress as a girl. When I was called a girl, believe me, it wasn't some championship of any gender identity I may or may not have had at the time. It was designed as an insult to push me away from the gender deviancy they perceived in me. But here's the other thing Graham and his supporters don't take into account. I am not an expert, but I do have a habit of listening to the experts and therefore taking their word for it. It may have escaped your notice, but in the past year we have seen the dangerous consequences of people in power publicly stating that they won't listen to the experts and its terrible effect on human life. And those are examples not even focusing on the trans issue. But it's easy to make it a trans issue. You see, here's the problem. Graham is so concerned about the impressionability of young children, but he has very much become an advocate for the voices who support trans conversion therapy, which, whilst illegal in the UK, is not illegal in Ireland. He's literally advocating for people who not only abuse children, but according to several peer-reviewed reports, is a therapy that is directly responsible for the suicidal tendencies of 47% of people who have gone through it. He is so concerned about the impressionable nature of children that he's all about enforcing his beliefs that children can't self-identify by literally supporting an aggressive, abusive, and oft-times violent form of impression on said children. Make no mistake, Graham is not an advocate of free speech, children, or even women at this point. He is literally a bigoted, self-confessed religious fascist attempting to paint the fetid, decomposed corpse of a system designed to wipe the trans community out of existence through violent means, both figuratively and literally. And he's targeting the most vulnerable members of our society to achieve that aim. And apparently we're the Nazis? Yes, men who claim to be women can be rapists. Transgender people can be rapists. Cisgender people can be rapists. This is a fact. Not one transgender will deny that, but transgenderism is not the prerequisite for rape or abuse, just as much as being a man is not the prerequisite for rape or abuse. I personally was raped at 7 by a cis woman, so I can appreciate it when J.K. Rowling mentions her attack at the hands of a man, who she has never once claimed to be transgender. What I don't appreciate is how she equates her abuse to the transgender condition. It would be as crazy as me equating my trauma to trans men or to women as a whole. That some women rape or one woman raped me as a child does not mean that I don't trust women. I'm not even wary of other women, even though I have experienced very real and physical abuse at the hands of a woman 12 years ago as well. I'm not saying that people who suffer abuse shouldn't be wary, because we all deal with trauma in our own way, with a defense mechanism that works for us personally. But just because you can find cases of cis and trans women who are abusive does not mean that every member of that community is either abusive or a rapist. It's an unfair equivocation. The problem with TERF's arguments is not that people in general were predisposed to be rapists or pedophiles already, either by their history or their track record, but their claim on whether or not these people were trans or pretending to be women just for the sake of being predatory. It is their narrative that just because some trans people, no matter how few, were predatory, and that therefore is an excuse to say that no trans women can ever be trusted. And again, we're the Nazis here? So, 3 weeks ago I found out that I have a uterus. I was at one time in the promise of being able to have children of my own, but it was denied me. I was in fact born intersex, and I've had the misfortune of finding this out 6 weeks after coming out as transgender. So you can imagine the emotional impact that had on me. Finding out that I wasn't just born into the wrong body, but actually I was born into both bodies, and my identity was not based on some internal emotional development, but on the ideals of what my parents and medicine defined for me because of my external genitals. I'm literally only now just developing breast tissue, which since coming out. And I haven't even started HRT yet. And ever since coming out, I feel that I'm a better person for it. Less depressed, happier, and more myself than I've ever been before. Why do I bring this up? Well, Graham is so set in his transphobia that he literally supports the Utah conservative bill that defines a woman as, and I quote, an individual with ovaries who is confirmed before or at birth to have external anatomical characteristics that appear to have the purpose of performing the natural reproductive function of providing eggs and receiving sperm from a male donor. That's right, according to this bill, my womanhood is only defined by my lack of a penis. In order to be a woman, I have to be little more than have the capability of being a baby incubator for 9 months. And guess what? This would horrify Graham. Apparently, up until recently, I could have been that very incubator that defines me as a woman. That's right, folks. Not only is the bill Graham supports transphobic, homophobic, and sexist, but it is also the very bill that threatens to take away my right to choose who and what I am as an intersex person. My right to choose to have children of my own was literally torn from me thanks to the religious objections my parents had, similar to that Graham has to the existence of trans people. So damn right, I take Graham Linehan personally. Not only has he done to my enjoyment of Father Ted that J.K. Rowling has done to Harry Potter fans, but also his very philosophy has denied me the right to be a woman and a mother based on my external genitals. So yeah, I take this stunt to be tasteless, and one that not only emphasizes how ignorant he is, but how hateful and dangerous he is, especially after said stunt put 20 innocent people at risk. The only thing going for him right now is the fact that he hasn't called for a registry of trans people yet. But if he has since my posting of this video and I missed it somehow, it would not surprise me in the slightest.